Does anybody like watch what God's having going on in other people's lives? Have y'all remember the story of the pool where the crippled man sat beside the pool of Bethesda? His goal was to sit by this pool because supposedly, according to the Bible, when this pool was stirred by the angels, or an angel would stir the waters, whoever got in the pool first would be healed. When this angel would stir the waters, whoever got in the pool supposedly first would be healed. Well, anyhow, sometimes in people's lives, you can see God stirring waters. And, sorry guys, already. I've been seeing everybody around me's life being stirred and bubbling. Do you know there's a trade winds? Like when people used to sail. Has anybody in here ever sailed a boat? You have? Anybody else? I would love to do that. That seems like the neatest thing to me, that God's got power floating around free, that people used to cruise all over the world. Well, there's trade winds that go around the world in the northern and southern hemisphere, and you have to have wind and rough water in order to get somewhere. You know, and then whenever they would hit this place in the middle, in the temperate zone around the middle of the earth, sometimes in the summer, there would be no wind. It'd just be slick as glass, the ocean. And then they just sat there and waited for a storm to come, anything to change, to get them a wind to go on around the world. And they called that place the doldrums. That area of the earth is called the doldrums because sailors it sounds like ho-hum. Well, God works like that in people's life. If you've got slick water all around you, you know, ain't nothing happening. You know, when the sea gets choppy, things happen. Well, anyhow, I see that God stirring in the lives of people. Since I've seen God working in everybody's life, though, I do want to say this. At some point, when we come together in the right frame, the right spirit with God, God will do great things. And I think it's fixing to happen. I don't know when, don't know whether it's today. It's when we get right and we all get in one accord. Y'all know the story in Acts when they all were of one accord. And Jesus says, when two or more are gathered in my name, there will I be also. Then he also adds, whatsoever you ask in my name, I'll give it to you. But you got to mesh and jihad before that'll happen. Anyhow, everybody y'all brought everything you're supposed to have today, didn't you? Everybody got their Bible, their concordance, their calculator, y'all don't have Strong's theological concordances, would you? Okay. All right, well then, if you got a pencil, okay then. All right, this is a trick. If you ever seen it before, don't tell your neighbor. It ain't no fancy schmancy. Anyhow, everybody think of a number between 1 and 10. You ain't supposed to tell it. Okay, and then I want you. Hey Chelsea, I want you to add 7 to it. So don't pick. You can pick a number between 1 and 1,000. It'll still work, but it's just easier to keep up with. Add 7 to it. Okay? Let me put a plus there. Let me put your number up here. There's X. This is one of them algebra equations. Subtract 3. Okay? Keep up with it now. All right? Add 9. Yeah, I can't even make a 9. Boy, this thing down low. Okay. Everybody got that? Got your number? Okay. Take away the number you started with. Okay, let me put that right here. I put an S there. Let me see, I got my X up here. Add 2. I'm getting down here low now, guys. Okay. Everybody got that? Subtract 14. Let me know. Everybody wave your hand when you got it. You got it? Okay, well now I'm going to try to figure out what y'all's number is. And in the meantime, I'm going to try to see what you could finally come up with in that equation. Let me see. Maybe one. Does that, everybody get that? Anyhow, that seems like a neat trick. But it really ain't nothing but a shell game. You know, it's just a common shell game. You know where the guys stir things around? You started with something, and then you come down here and you take that something out. All I got to do is keep up with this. The devil knows the tricks. The rest of that's just smoke. Oh, this don't even matter. That's all just smoke. The devil knows the trick well. So, if you would, open your Bible, and I want you to read with me Revelation. Oh, I got my mind upside down. Revelation chapter, we'll start with Revelation chapter 2, verse 4 and 5. Oh, everybody ready? Wow, y'all didn't bring your Bible, did you? Okay. Well, we'll just use 4 out of this one. It says, never mind, she's got it. Nevertheless, I have somewhat against thee, because thou hast left thy first love. This is Jesus talking to the churches in Asia Minor, and the Revelation. This is actually postmortem Jesus red letters, since we're all doing the red letters. In this week, we're studying serving. And if you've ever served, how many of y'all love being a servant? We all say that every week. You know, I love serving in the nursery. I love serving in the yard mowing crew. You know what I'm saying? We love serving. But do you know you can actually be doing the right things in the wrong motives, the wrong ways, and it's sin? You know, the right thing can be sin to you if the wrong motive is there. Anyhow, he says, nevertheless, I have somewhat against you. That's a bad thing right there at the start. This is Jesus talking to a church. Now, he ain't talking to a lost person. Jesus has somewhat against thee. How many of y'all would love to hear that tonight when you sit down there and get down before God and pray? When God says, Bill, I have somewhat against thee, I'd be going, ooh. You know what I'm saying? Y'all ever get that feeling? Anyhow, he says, because thou hast left thy first love. What do you think was the first love that got you first to Jesus? What is the qualifications to meeting Jesus? First of all, God's got to call you, but that ain't up to you. Second of all, you have to bring yourself to a point of admitting your errors, that you are insufficient to get there. It's called humility. All right, I want to look at some other verses, though, to show you this with Jesus talking. Jesus has a way of leveling the playing field for everybody. You know, whether you're Laney, Noah, Chelsea, Miss Lorna, you know, everybody in here, it's a level playing field. You know, first of all, we had to come to God in humility, and Jesus says this in, let me think of this verse. I don't know the number, Linda. You're going to have to bail me out. Jesus says this, come unto me, all ye that are heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. For I am meek and lowly. You know that verse that's in Mark, maybe? Is that Mark or is that a Matthew version? Matthew 11. Okay, Matthew 11. All right, I got it wrote down here. I didn't know which one was which. And he's Matthew 11, 29, 30. Take my yoke upon you, for I am meek and lowly in heart. Jesus himself is meek, okay? And when Jesus it says he was made, I didn't give her this verse, sorry. He was made a little lower than the angels. He stepped down out of glory on a throne to be, let me get these things off, to be like a man or as a man, to serve all men. That's a pretty big step down. You know, that's a conscientious choice he made. And when we allow our minds to wander and puff up, what do we do? Think about that. What do you do when your boss is on you? What do you do? I can say that my boss is here. You know what I'm saying? What do? Do you puff up? I don't deserve this. It's true. This is true. I didn't say I was right, though. You know what I'm saying? Do you puff up? Or do you just say, oh, I'm so sorry? How many of y'all do that reaction most of the time? You know what I'm saying? We all puff up. Well, what happens to us as Christians? Look at I want to go to Moses for a second. Look at, what did God say about Moses? Moses has a great name in the history of all mankind. All of us want a great name, don't we? All of us spend all our life working to be famous among people, to be popular. How many school kids want to be the hottest girl in school that everybody thinks of? You know that pretty girl? Oh, it was me? You know, we all want to be that guy. People spend years to get to Hollywood. They want their name famous. Well, Moses has a name famous throughout all of history. God bestowed much honor upon Moses. And how many of y'all ever saw God? Nobody? Oh, you did? Oh, that was you just flipping your hair. Nobody's ever saw God? Has anybody ever talked to God face to face? Has anybody ever had God come and say, Moses, above all men on the face of the earth, was more meek? You know, what did Moses do different from everybody else? Jesus said, the meek shall inherit the earth. Okay, what Moses had the ability to do was never see himself better, more powerful, stronger than anybody. You know, if I was Moses, when I held the stick out there and the water blew apart, yeah, boys, I got the stick. You know, I play cards and games sometimes with my family. Nobody can talk more trash than me. Nobody. And everybody don't play. Is it not true, Chelsea? And they would rather beat me and lose $1 million in a game just for me talking all that noise. But Moses never saw himself that way. When his sister and his brother came in, they kind of got puffed up one day. They sat there and say, yeah, God, don't you also speak to us? We're prophets also. We're children of the Levites. And Moses, you know, he has a problem with his choice in marriage. And they went in there talking all that noise. Moses' response was, yeah, you do. Even though his head's glowing like a nuclear reactor's done lit him up. His head's glowing. He talks to God face to face. God sits down in his easy chair every day to come hang out with Moses. He got his own lazy boy in Moses' place there, you know, and they all hang out chat. You got the only pass to God's big screen TV, and God hangs out and personally visits with you every day. And then somebody comes in and tells you, man, you ain't no better than us. How many of y'all would react in the way Moses did? I'd be thinking, I'm way better than you. You know, Moses didn't. He said, you know, you're right. God does speak to other people. And anyhow, then God stepped in and said, oh, no. Don't go there, boys. You ain't nowhere in this category. He didn't see himself as elevated. Well, sometimes us as Christians, we find ourselves elevating ourselves. Self-promotion is called self-righteousness. We find ourselves, but we aren't, but how many decisions got you to Jesus? Think about it. How many decisions did you make in your life to come to Jesus? Okay. How many decisions would it take to reverse the order? So basically, all men on earth are how many decisions away from each other? It's a pretty simple math. Right, you can either be lost or saved in one decision. You know, you can be right with God or not right with God based on how many? One. Why would we elevate ourselves to a certain status knowing I got one decision between me and whatever else is out there? How many people, this book in Servitude, it says, Yeah, I mean, what do y'all think of when you think of a servant? Tell me what comes to your mind. What do you think of? I told Leslie, I picture people holding a little plate with their towel thrown over their arm. Of course, I don't eat in them kind of restaurants, but you know what I'm talking about? You know, you see them on TV and stuff. They walking around with a big silver plate, and they put the little napkin on you and stuff like that. I've never had that happen. But what I do think of waiters and waitresses. How many of y'all tip in a restaurant? Come on, let me see some hands. Surely y'all ain't all this cheap. You might be. But anyhow, all right, well, what determines a tip? It should be by the service you get. Then obviously you have to rate what happened. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly where I'm going. Why do they already put it on the ticket? What does it hurt your feelings when they put it on the ticket and then the service stinks? They walk right by you, your tea glass is empty. You say, excuse me, ma'am, eat the ice, you know, and you keep trying to wet your whistle. And then you look at your ticket and it's got 15% added on there automatically against everything. There was no service. You waited 3 hours on your food. Your wife ate, left, went and parked the car, had it washed and mowed the yard, come back and got you, and then they hand you a soggy hamburger. Well, that ain't good service. But have you ever had the service where they think about it before you ever even get there? You know, you go to grab your glass of tea, it's still half full, but it says, whoosh. They're standing right behind you, and then you bite the burger, the mayonnaise squirts out, gets over here on the side of your face, and you're fixing to grab a napkin, and the guy's handing you one already. You know, have you ever had a place like that where they just doted everything upon you? Before you can even think you hungry, they done throwed the food out there. Well, anyhow, that's good service. That's how what is the difference in the two? One's just trying to get a check. One's trying to make some money. The other one is what? What is the other one doing? Right, trying to please. Yeah, and one is worth every penny, but the other one ain't worth firing. Well, that's just my opinion. You in the wrong business if you in the serving business. Well, that's how we do sometimes serving God, is it not? How often do we serve God just to get the tip? We all after the tip. You know, how often do we serve God in the same time, that kind of ways that we just like the way we look in front of others? How often do we sing worried about how we look in front of others? You know, we sit here, praise God every day. How often do we live our lives in an effort to look good in front of others? You know, it ain't about the suit with the guy toting the plate makes him look good. What looks good is when that napkin hits you before the mayonnaise comes out. He's already got it here. He said, I'm serving a juicy hamburger, buddy. You better get this on ready. You know, he knows his business. You know why? He planned ahead. He looked forward to the things of God. Okay, now then, Moses was a guy that served out of a pure heart, being humble. That's the way we came to God. That was our first love, was it not? When you lose what brought you to God first, because I got news for you. If that didn't bring you to God, you might ought to reassess where you're standing. If the humility, the humbleness, the purity of saying, I was wrong and I have messed this up, if that didn't bring you to God, you ought to reassess where you're at, because you ain't there. Anyhow, then we move over into the piety of, how many of y'all ever used the pious card? Like this. It goes like this. I'll use it the way I would. Suppose somebody said, Bill, you want to come over and give me a hand today? Not today. I like to remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Yeah, y'all know what I'm talking about. Well, let's read the story. Read this out of Matthew. It's out of, I think, Luke. 18:10 through 14. Luke 18, there it is. Jesus tells this story in the red letters. Two men went up into the temple to pray. The one a Pharisee and the other a publican. Publican is a tax collector. Okay? I fast twice in the week, and I give tithes of all that I possess. And the publican, standing far off, would not so lift up so much as his eyes unto heaven, but smote upon his breast, saying, God be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone that exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. See how God flips that over? That's exactly the opposite of what the world does. A man that lifts himself up, Jesus also said this, if a man testifies of himself, it is nothing. That's worthless. How good an employee am I? Well, I like to think I'm probably the best ever. You might not want to talk to that fella back there in that green shirt. You know what I'm saying? That my word's worthless. What do you think I was going to tell you? I'm here trying to get a job. That's the truth. We all are like this. We self-exalt each other. And anyhow, when a man cannot find his way to be humbled, to admit his wrong, his errors, and you have to admit them to yourself first. You got to see, this ain't happening, guys. How many of y'all have trouble doing that? I can find everything. I was telling Kevin a joke. I don't know. Does anybody listen to AFR all day? Well, me and Jackie was the other day. Well, anyhow, I heard this joke. Y'all got time for me to tell you this joke? Y'all know who Jay Jasper is. Yeah, he talks like that. We always pick on him about that. Well, anyhow, he was telling this story where his family went into church one day. And anyhow, it was a man, a woman, grandma, two girls and a boy. And I ain't going to tell it exactly right. But anyhow, they all came into church and done. How many of y'all walk out of church sometime and say, did you see those spots in that ceiling where the water's leaking? But this is what this family did. The dad come out of there and said, that was the longest sermon I ever heard. He ran around chasing rabbits for hours on end, and I couldn't get nothing out of it because it didn't make any sense to me. And the woman said, did you see the way so-and-so was dressed? That whole bunch must be all loaded up going to hell. And they danced around in front of the church just dressed. And then one of the little girls said, the music was awful. It was just awful. It was some of that, sounded like honky-tonk music. And then they went on, Grandma said, he was so loud when he was preaching, I got a headache, now I got to go to the doctor. And then the other little girl said, not one single person in the youth group came and spoke to me. That's pathetic. They don't even care about the people in there. And then they finally asked the little boy, and they said, Johnny, what'd you think of the service? And he said, well, I didn't know what to make out of it. He said, but I was kind of worried we couldn't afford it. But he said, when they passed that plate around, I seen you throw the $1 in there. He said, man, I was thinking, how in the world are they going to stay in business and have this much entertainment for $1? Nobody has nothing to put into it, and nobody admits. And it's wrong to walk in and find our brothers and sisters at odds with one another. Not meshed. That's really the binding thing that keeps God from ever doing great things. How many of y'all want a great name? We die and we buy a rock with our name carved in it because a rock pretty well lasts forever. How many people would like some that lasts beyond the rock? I want a good name, but I don't lay up at night and imagine a great name. How would it be just to say, who would you like to meet in heaven besides Jesus? Moses? Be cool to come in and say, Dad, guess who I hung out with today? Who? That guy Moses. You'll be able to do that. What's Moses go home tell his daddy? I hung out with some kid I ain't never heard of. You see what I'm saying? How would you like to come in and say, I hung out with Paul the Apostle? I hung out with Brother Paul. I'm not belittling that, Brother Paul. Or how about I come in and say, I hung out with Jordan today. You know, everybody can have a great name. And what is the difference between Moses and Jordan? Nothing. Nothing except what God done. One decision, she made it. There's no difference. Only thing difference is the situation. The situation being when God moved. You know, God was in a place he had promised Abraham's descendants that he was going to move. I believe God's going to move on these people at some point. I ain't got the ability to tell you when. I can tell you the how. When these people mesh, love one another. Jesus said, you shall know my disciples by what? When they love one another. You know, we say we love people. How many of y'all ever use this term? Oh, I love him, and I don't hate the person. I just hate his ways. I hate the sinner. Y'all know that term? Just fess up. You hate him. That's the truth. I don't hate bin Laden. I hate his ways. You hate him. That's the truth. But when we learn to love one another, and this church does do a good job of loving, don't get me wrong. But obviously there's more. Do y'all know what I'm saying? There is more that we can do. I see God working in that woman's life right back here. 2 seconds of conversation. I can see God stirring in her places she's never been. I ain't got a clue where she's going. Doesn't matter. You know, faith is a matter of following where you've never been. Because if you've been there, it ain't faith no more. That's fact. That's true. Everyone, I see people all in this. Why is all of us all of a sudden got God taking us places we've never been? God wants to do something great. He wants every one of us to have a great name, not an average name. You believe that? How would you like for the Bible to say, and Jacqueline said, no way, Satan. You know what I'm saying? Wouldn't that be cool? Have that wrote down forever in God's Word. Well, that's who really testifies of Moses. That's who testified of Jesus. Jesus said, my Father testifies of me. The great works that are done by Jesus was God testifying of his Son. This is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased. Is that not a testimony? Boy, how would y'all like to walk out of here today and God say that through the sky and to the whole world? What if he said, about Julian, this is my beloved Son too, in whom I'm well pleased. That's a whole lot better than Bill saying, man, that's a nice haircut. That's a cool shirt, Julian. That don't quite cut it, does it? We should aspire for greatness. And remember this about all others around us. How many decisions there is. No matter whether theirs were good or bad, there is. How many decisions is it that separates us from drug dealers, prostitutes, adulterers, blasphemers? How many decisions is it between us and them? One decision, buddy. That's the only difference. And they can turn the tables on that instantly, just like that. And that's really all I had with this sermon. I was going to tell you about Cinderella. Josh didn't want to sing the song. I probably have some Cinderella experts in here, not knowing where to look around the room. But I'll bet there's several Cinderella experts. What did Cinderella want out of the story? Everybody knows the story. Huh? What did Cinderella want? The money? Nah. She wanted a name. A big and famous name. I am Cinderella. You don't get that when you're sweeping ashes, do you? Sometimes you don't feel like it. You don't when the rats is running around. You ain't got no pretty clothes to go to the ball. You know, you don't have all those things. You know. So what do? You sit around and mope and kick the dirt around. You ain't got you got an evil stepmother You got all those things, and the devil's an evil stepmother. Well, Jesus invited you to a ball. Some people didn't wear the clothes they're supposed to. Jesus invited us, each and every one, to greatness in the kingdom. He offers you the glass slippers, you know, and you can show up tattered, but just like that, it can be changed into a beautiful garment. Will the world recognize the silk dress? I don't want to wear a silk dress, don't get me wrong. Maybe he'll give me a silk suit. You know, but would the world recognize that? No, they're all jealous because they're still fighting by the wrong set of rules. They're still trying to make the first, not the last first. They're still not being a servant. They're trying to dole power and authority over one another. You got an automatic win in that case. Well, anyhow, sometime we need to just stop and look at the other side. Just because they're wearing the raggedy clothes, just because they covered with ashes, just because they ain't the most beautiful looking thing in the world. You know, the pumpkin can turn into a chariot or whatever. God can turn any shortcomings we have into a blessing beyond belief. God can take anything in your life. Brother Paul's foot. I told him, I said, man, we need to pray for that thing. We're going to have you jumping like Michael Jordan. You ever seen a man wear bubble wrap for a cushion? I've seen it. That's something I would do right there. I'm telling you, that's something I would do. I'd be walking around. What's that noise? I don't hear it. But God can take infirmities and glorify himself with them. God can take ugly guys and make them nice. God can take snobby little girls in one decision and turn them into beauty queens. You know, so what we need, there's hope, Julian, there's hope. But anyhow, what we need to do in order to get right with God and mesh, we got to remember we're one decision of difference at the most. That doesn't mean two decisions weren't made. I'm saying one decision of difference. We can go either way on one decision.